Wednesday, January 17th. Everything sort of played perfectly into levels. So anytime you have any kind of volatility, you always want to remember to be playing the multi-day. So 30-minute candles, 4-hour overlay candles, but I love this setup, and I've been noticing this a lot more, that especially when you have a trend switch, if you end up opening below the bear pivot, a lot of times it'll want to go down to at least the second fib before it reverses. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that you have a continuation, to a reversal, but I mean, a lot of times that move will exhaust, so you can then look for the long, and then possibly re-enter in the short somewhere. So as long as you know that, you don't get FOMO, as in the second fib is important, and if it goes past that even more, then it's just gonna be a crazy day then. So let's go into the review and how. Remember that you need to have a plan throughout the day. Let's go ahead and let's do a. I'll do it on a 5-minute. Let's do this. I'll get rid of the afternoon so you can see the morning. Again, you see this is all hindsight, but if you actually in the moment are able to play certain key areas, you'll be fine. And that's all you need to do, is you just need to wait for those key areas. So mixing technical analysis and these pivots, this is what you do. So the previous day, you can see clearly that there's these wicks. And there's a wick right here. So this right here was a wick before it reversed. So anytime you see a wick and then a reverse, usually that's some kind of support structure that is forming. So I usually put a line right there. So that's always good for later on to understand where something potentially could go, right? So like say for instance we got down and we went, this was going to reverse, I wouldn't think they would refill the entire gap, but if they end up breaking back above here, they would at least come and retest this as support, which is now resistance. Sure enough, you can see later on the afternoon they actually did that on the last 30-minute candle. So going into that, let's look into the morning session. So pretty much the first 30 minutes they just started just dumping this, like no questions asked. It was 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, all the way to 30 minutes, and then right into the next TPO. They brought it down and then they scooped it up that 5 minutes, and then they ended up coming back here. So at the end of the day, like if you anytime you hear me say play the pivots, like you need to be super careful on not trying to catch a falling knife, right? So in this case, you can see that. Let's see. Let's even go further back. You can see VWAP caught up, and we're using that as resistance. So even after this dump, this next 5-minute candle could barely get over VWAP, and so you don't want to be going long, right? Because VWAP's right here. So if you're trying to go long right here, it's not really a good risk reward, right? So you want to wait until things are exhausted, or at least let the first 30-minute candle play out. Because if you did that, when this actually busted through and this 5-minute actually held, then you could have got in right here for the short, and then waited for the continuation. So then you can see right here, continuation. That would have been 50 points. So even if you missed this entire move, you could have got in for another 50 points. So, if you decided that you wanted to go long here, you would only been stopped out 10 points and then no to flip. So now that the end of the TPO is happened and you still haven't got to the bottom, you don't want to be front running this. If you miss it, you miss it, But but wait, because if you notice that, let's go to a 1 minute. Right when that next TPO, see that next candle, they dropped it, and then they went past it about 1 or 2 points, and then the next minute they scooped it up, and then they took it all the way up. So that was another 50 points. So you could have just waited to the next TPO, play with the rules. The rule states that, hey, are you above or below within going into the next TPO? So this is the 9 o'clock candle. And so you go long. You go long, and then what do? Once you hit here, you go short. You don't question it. You're under VWAP, you're at the pivot, and you go short. Because a lot of times what will end up happening is you have this right here. You'll have a drop. It might consolidate and then drop and come back down here. It never did that today. Who cares? Okay, you get stopped out by 5 or 10 points, and you reassess until the next move. So let's go into the next thing when you're assessing and looking at this. Now, the next thing you want to look at is get the sentiment. That's why I like the 5-minute candles. You're able to see how these candles move. You just had a huge move. Let things breathe, because there's always room for reversals or even continuations. So you notice that by the end of this TPO, they actually closed it above this pivot. So that tells you that's strong, as in this potentially could be a fake breakdown or a breakdown into support and then a reversal candle, and you're getting over VWAP. So don't mess with VWAP. Like the moment you get over it or you start getting above it, that means the trend could be shifting. So let's look at a 1 minute candle. It gives you a little bit more detail, but what is going on here? Oh, that's later on in the day. So this is what's considered a liquidity sweep. So a lot of times, again, you have a failed breakdown reversal at a key level. So what do? We closed basically above, and then they consolidated it. They broke back below pretty quick, but then they immediately scooped it up. So you shouldn't be chasing this, or if you got in here, which is a good entry, you put your stop here, and if you get stopped out, you know that this potentially could be a reversal. So then you get in long, or if you miss this move, wait for a retest. There's usually some kind of retest. Sure enough, it ended up taking about 20, 30 minutes. It came back down. It got as close to VWAP and into this line as possible. And then they ended up ripping it into the next, where we are. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. Then they ended up ripping it. So you see how this whip? They wicked it up. That's why I like 5 minutes. So you see that this right here should tell you that, oh my gosh, they're going to probably keep going. So you wait for some kind of pullback. You get in as close as you can. You put your stop right here. If you get stopped out, then again, reassess. Because if this comes back down, you'll probably be able to scoop it a little bit. And so you scoop it, and then you hold it, and this would have ended up being roughly about 77 points. Or on this push, you would have got, say, 50 points. And then you could have reassessed. But if you miss this, again, here is a fib. Use that as support, and then there you go. So now you're into so let's look at the ribbon. What was the ribbon telling me? So one thing's telling me, oh, this is they're possibly flipping this. So you could be long biased, but again, remember, this is not like any other day. So take a line, draw it right here on that multi-day pivot, and then use that as a resistance. And that's also where they opened it right here. So the question that I'm going to ask you is, what time is it? Look, it's 10:30. Are you closing candles above here at 10:30? You're not, so you need to be shorting. So even if you miss this move down, this push back up, you go short. And where's your target? At least a VWAP. What does it do? Comes down to VWAP. Also, another thing where that also coincides, where if you don't notice, is this right here. See where it's wicking? It's also the low where it closed 3 days ago. So that's why it is sort of an important area, and that's why you see this afternoon. I mean, it's important, but not necessarily important. What's important are pivots, because here's another pivot, right here. Put that line right here. So here you broke above it, and see you're consolidating above it. So if you don't do any TA and you strictly just do levels, then this can really help you. So here is the push up, here's the push down, and then I'm looking into a possible reversal off VWAP. I didn't think that they were going to take this down, just because of they would have done it quick already. And this was a pretty big recovery. Like if they only came right here, then yes, they would come back down. But the fact that they recovered the entire day tells me it's a little strong. It just the candles doesn't make sense for on a 30 minutes for him to go drop it down, go all the way back up, and then come back down. If they were going to do that, then I would expect them in the afternoon to flush all the way back down. So anyways, so going back to the chart, so you see that if you would have got long here, you would have had, once again, another 50 points, okay? Now what do? It's 12 o'clock. You know, what's the rule? Are you above or below pivot? You're below. What do? You short it. If you would have shorted it, now you're getting into a new period between 12 and 12:30. It's the afternoon. So I actually am not going to target VWAP. I'm going to target the pivot. What does it do? It goes right down to the pivot. I mean, ideally you want to be targeting this fib. This is your multi-day, because again, if you're playing 30-minute candles, you're going to be playing these higher time frame pivots. And then sure enough, you would have ended up having about a 68-point move. Now in the afternoon, you do have to be short biased, because it started breaking down, but I was not. I was noticing that they were wicking this up, and they should have just been flushing this pretty quick. And so once again, you need to be looking for a failed breakdown reversal, which on a higher time frame is a lower high. So you notice that they dropped it down. This was after 12:30, okay? So it's 12:30 is a new 4-hour period. So look, you see these overlay candles? That 4-hour period ended above this pivot, right? It ended above this pivot. So you see how it was red, it came down, came up, so you have this wick. So now you have to visualize, where do you think this thing is going to go? I think there's plenty of range, but to the downside, they needed it to close below this for me to be convinced that they're going to go down. If not, this usually ends up happening where you have a failed breakdown reversal again. So what do? You had multiple pivots. So you had this pivot and this pivot. But remember, this is a main multi-day pivot. See right here to the left. So you had a breakdown, 5-minute close, and the next 5 minutes, they scooped it back up. And so the last 15 minutes of that 30-minute candle, so 5, 10, 15, down, 5, 10, 15, up. So you see this 4-hour candle, see how it's like a shooting star? So they scooped it up, and it closed above this pivot. So that tells you that's support for the day. It's support. Even though you have VWAP here, I mean, again, at some point, you don't want to necessarily trust in VWAP. VWAP is handy, but can also be distracting. So what you do is you don't want to be short biased. You want to be long biased now, because what? You're above a pivot, right? You're not below the pivot. So if you're shorting right here, what are you shorting into a pivot? So you got to flip your mindset and also look at the chart right here. Like you have room from right here all the way back up. That's another 60 points. So what did they end up doing? They ended up really quickly. This was 5:10 on that 15th minute candle. You shot it up 5, 10, 15, so the last 15 minutes. And then once the new TPO happened, they spent the next 15 minutes, 5, 10, 15, going all the way back up. And where did they go? They ended up going right to the line, which is the mid, or the bear pivot. So here, now you make a dilemma. You're like, well, what do you go? You think they're going to keep going? Well, no. You short it. This looked like it was pretty nasty, but I end up shorting it right here, and my target is down here. Now, ideally, my target was going back down for the rest of the afternoon. Let's go back to VWAP, because this is what I was thinking that they were going to do. Because you notice on the higher time frame, it's a lower high. So look, if you draw a line, actually, you really want to do it on a 30-minute candle, because those wicks don't really matter. It's the closes that really matter. You see? So in essence, I was thinking that they're going to keep that as resistance, and then they're going to come back down here the last 30 minutes, and then this is sort of going to be a bear flag for tomorrow, a possibility down. But you have to be nimble. So what I ended up doing was taking this, and guess what? I ended up making 30 points. I had like 15 contracts, but I took profit. It needed to bust through quick. And once it started chopping around, it's sort of telling me that it's losing the momentum. You see how right here, how it went down, 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 down. And here it just went down, came back up, down, came back up. So you need to like make sure you take profit and be all right with your idea not going. Because look, if you end up, this broke down right here. If it ends up coming back above the pivot, even though you have a multi-day, this is a reversal, right? It's telling you that it wants to go down, but all these people who went short now are going to get stopped out, and so this is when you start having to squeeze. So the last basically 15 minutes of the day, you go almost another 50 points. Plus also, if you notice, this is a consolidation, right? It's a flag, it's above it, and you have a breakout. And if you get rid of the pivot, see, sometimes the ribbon is good. Ribbons are good for trend days. You can see that we went down, we went up over, we went below it, we went back above it. So ideally, you don't want to be using it as a trend, but in this case, it still did help you with the EMA where it was bouncing off, right? So this was not an easy day, but there was a lot of range if you got in at very critical points, right? Very critical points, and that's if you're able to get at these extreme areas, you can get the fast moves. If you don't, you're going to get slow, choppy moves, right? 10:30 between 10:30 and noon. So a lot of times you get small range. So in an hour and a half, you have small range, and then the volume picked up, and then you had a 50 point down, 50 point up, 50 point up. But anyways, at the end of the day, this is what really matters, is playing your levels and your charts. So what is this showing me? So if right here, you have a high, you have a dip, and if you draw the line, look what it ends up doing. You're basically still in a trend. So for tomorrow, this is my oh crap line right here. If we are above it, then I'm looking for momentum to speed up, and we possibly can come up here, break up, but really, this is your range for tomorrow. And then if that breaks, then you're going to keep going higher, right? This was a triple top, so that could squeeze really hard. But if not, then I'm looking for this, at least in the morning. See how the morning period is? So this right here says 12 o'clock, this vertical line. You could be playing in this range, and they could just chop it around all in here. So if the safest thing to do is get in at critical areas, but also if you notice, this is a breakout. If the first 30 minutes, or if we gap down tomorrow back below the bull, then that's a failed breakout, of a pivot. You got to close above, and then if you have a close below of a 30, but I want to see that 30-minute candle close, then that's telling me that the weakness is still there, And sure enough, again, you could consolidate in here, that in the morning, and then potentially break out. So there's a lot that can happen. There's just play the pivots. If we go down, then downside could by the end of the week come down here, right? If we have upside, then that could be a pullback, and we could end up making our way back up to the highs. Or this could go down, come back up, and then this could be sort of a double top, and then next week come back down. So just be really nimble, but all we're trying to do again is take what we can from the market, and there was plenty of opportunities right here to make probably 300 to 500 points. There's multiple 50 points, and if you're a 30-point person, there's plenty of 30-point areas. So anyways, that is how you play today. It wasn't easy. You had to really not be biased and have your emotions in check. But if you did do that and sort of watch the price action, the trend would have been in your favor.